to get us started, we're going to have a spoken word performance from Kyle Toyama. And I should let you know that the opinions he's going to express are very strong, and there will be some explicit language. So you may want to step out or cover your ears if that bothers you. But otherwise, Kyle?
I am here, right now. But I want to take it back. Back when? Back then. Back then? Not even way back then. What's happening? Waves crashing, back and forth, then and now, repetitive, relapsing, no relaxing, replay stuck on stupid executive action. When will the mass win against the mass wind produced by the cats in power production? Our reduction, in our most desperate hour, you devour discussion. Hushed it, books then, now it's a function. A day of remembrance of while I'll respectfully bow to a Muslim. If he greeted me with that honorary statement, I'll probably stop and thank him. May peace be with you, brother, assalamu alaikum. At the same time, give an apology and say that some people in this country got a little anxious because we were attacked by people that look like you now, people in power running around illogically mistaken. Sound familiar? Produce fear over facts? Now a baby girl running away with tears from the gas, I hope that horror haunts you through images. The Supreme Court has got you tripping. These executive orders sound hostile and militant. This Muslim ban is Korematsu revisited. We put our trust in y'all and wound up in this fucking stall with a rotten smell. Told America you got intel and that's how we got no bail, then tossed in jail. Now, tell America a terrorist plot and they'll go to war at any country. Watch it get bombed to hell as your pockets swell from every rocket shell you launch yourself. There they go on the rise, along with your stocks as well. So to the critics and the dumbass clowns, let me dumb it down. You're an American citizen with full rights, then Pearl Harbor come around. Everything you work hard for, take it. No trial, then locked up by the 100,000, spit out, then start from scratch in your own country. Then I was like, fuck them now. See, back then, those founding principles we keep so proud is now what this imbecile needs to be about. Because if we go to war with China or Korea now, I'm afraid for the China and Korea towns. Back then, it was give me your huddled masses. Now, it's welcome to America. Build it, clean it, so we can claim it. Bolster our overseas soldiers, please, for our children, it's too dangerous. When done with you, we'll keep you under through the red tape and papers. After the media rainstorm, you'll hardly be missed, barely a vapor. Because it's easy to make people fret or forget whenever there's a threat we need to neutralize. Even then fought for to your side. Now, advertise, supersize, truth or lies, stupefied. What about that medicine you prescribe? What about our veteran suicides? What about the parents holding bake sales to buy school supplies? From venom-laced inaugural lectures to signing away illogical measures, obstacles tethered to unstoppable ledgers, the truth is bottled, no honorable excerpts. But maybe this new dawn is fresher, a knowledgeable expert, because prisons, healthcare, and warfare are such profitable ventures. But walking that path again is pathogen, collapse within, destruction is imminent, isn't it? The same way we got rid of quick the indigenous and hardworking immigrant. Benjamin's in your vision, I'm not judging your ignorance, I'm judging your lack of innocence. Fixation, fear, overfast, discriminate, incident, images isn't just coincident. Your dinner, friends, businesses, and dividends receive bigger wins and privileges whenever certain citizens are in the pits. But now I'm not the kids, unleashed, introduced as Kyle Toyama, but they got that wrong. Nah, I am the guy that your mama warned you about. I'm about to bring harm and do that fight in my armor. My type is your karma. Now, start by dissecting this mantra cleverly disguised as MAGA. I'll swear in front of a judge and look in the eyes of your honor. I love this country to death, won't sell it out for a sponsor. I am no upperclassman, graduate type, or a scholar, but I know what's fair and what's right, and they always fighting with dollars. Then, propaganda turned TV dinner brains, washed, lined up for a slaughter, put a neck in a noose and a tie in your collar. So what if this guy is a baller, true intent, disguised, an imposter? Now, better check for me under your bed at night, cause on the mic I'm a monster. It's time to sleep in that bed you lay. I mean, it is good nighttime. It's not about being left or right. It's about being in the right mind. God forbid oil inside a Rushmore is something they might find, putting pumps on the press heads, petroleum passes through Arlington National, and call it a veteran pipeline. Wouldn't that piss off every American man, woman, child, or soldier? Defy the imposer with middle fingers from the side of your holster? Pepper spray away, they will not sit there, lie, and roll over, and that's why we cannot forget about the tribes of Dakota. Because with certain people at the rains, it pours and rains on hordes with those whose ultimate price were paid in tours. Laws rearrange some more until they favor your side, thinking the world stage is yours. Okinawa was a major score. Just like Hawaii, Guam, and Puerto Rico, a tropical picturesque place, of course, for your tank and forts, your military base resorts. What I find most outrageous, the least courageous receive raises in wages while waging wars. Bloodsuckers probably find a way to suck the oil out of a teenager's pores. Because some people want to build camps. Some people want to build walls. Some people want to drop bombs. I think some people drop the ball. Some people want to blame others. Some people think they're above the law. Screech and stall a whole government because some people didn't get their way at all. Ironic, I've been summoned then, but I'm here now to talk about more than my fellow Japanese and kin. I was given that phone call because they know, y'all, I'm bad with that ink and pen. Get the cultural pot stirring, gears turning rapidly within, because the BS from back then is now happening again. This is not attack, this is react, and meant for more to sit through. At this point, I don't care how you got there. Just do these people right and unify through issue. If not, get your ass out that office and your door. Don't let the door hit your ass, don't let the door hit you. On your way out, don't forget to take Mike Pence with you.
Executive Order 9066. It said nothing about Japanese immigrants or Japanese Americans. It simply authorized the Secretary of War and any designated military commanders to declare parts of the United States military zones. Within these zones, they could restrict the movement of anyone in or out, including the complete exclusion and removal of anyone from these zones. It may not have said so directly, but subsequent actions made it clear the executive order was targeted at the Nikkei community. Put yourselves in their shoes. Imagine your life disrupted. Kicked out of your job, your school, your home, sent off to remote, unknown destinations with only the things you can carry. And for who knows how long. You wind up in a government facility euphemistically called a relocation center or an internment camp. But as you look around at the barbed wire and the armed guards in their towers, you realize you're in a prison. There you are. Not for anything that you've done, but for what others are afraid you might do. 77 years ago, this is what nearly 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry faced. So how did this happen? The Commission on the Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians blamed race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. These were not the only reasons, and you'll learn about some of them in the upcoming film. But let's just look at these three. First, race prejudice. Let's go back to not just 1942, but over 200 years ago, with the Naturalization Act of 1790. This law stipulated that only immigrants who were, quote, free white persons, quote, unquote, were eligible to become naturalized American citizens. Now you might be thinking, well, it's the 18th century, you'd expect something like that. However, based on this law, Asian immigrants would be denied the possibility of becoming Americans until 1952. At the time, there were headlines saying, immigrants who work for cheap wages are taking away American jobs. That sound familiar? This argument resulted in 1908's Gentlemen's Agreement between Japan and the United States, putting limits on the immigration of male Japanese laborers. However, Issei women continued to arrive. There were other headlines warning of the horrors posed by these immigrants. Hordes of them are coming into this country, and they breed like rabbits. They don't speak English. They'll never assimilate. In 1913, the Alien Land Law prohibited non-citizen Asians from buying land. Enterprising Americans circumvented the law by buying land in the names of their American-born children. But despite these efforts to discourage immigrants, fears of Japanese takeover persisted. And it led to a complete travel ban on immigration from Japan in 1924. Let's look at the war hysteria. After Pearl Harbor, the FBI immediately seized community leaders, business leaders, religious leaders, teachers, and any others among the Nikkei population they regarded as potentially dangerous. These people were ripped away from their families. They were left not knowing where their loved ones were taken or what had happened to them. At the time, it was said the Japanese, immigrants and Americans alike, were dangerous. They were sneaky. They couldn't be trusted. They were bad people. Many of them were thought to be spies and saboteurs. In the event of a Japanese invasion, they would turn on America. This was a national emergency. There wasn't time to sort through and determine who was good or who was bad. So in the interest of national security, for the safety of the country, anyone of Japanese ancestry needed to be locked up. To this day, as we've seen in a recent letter to the Los Angeles Times, there are people who still believe the Nikkei were a threat during World War II, and that their imprisonment was justified. The problem is, it was all fake news. Not only was the danger posed by Nikkei a lie, and here's where the failure of political leadership comes in, but worse yet, the US government knew these accusations were false, and they tried to cover it up. We know this with the hindsight of history and through the heroic efforts of some very determined individuals. Thanks to them, we have proof. Proof that led to an apology and redress and reparations. But obviously, more people need to be educated, and hopefully, with works like this brand new documentary that we're about to show, we can help educate more people.
Alvin, and thank you all very much for having me here today. I really want to thank the Gardena Valley Japanese Cultural Institute for having me here today, for showing this film. And I do want to be honest. I want to share with you a little bit that, please pardon me if I'm off my game a little bit. Some of you may have heard that my friend and the only Japanese American elected official in San Francisco, Public Defender Jeff Adachi, passed away very suddenly last night. And I think it's appropriate to reflect on Jeff for a moment while making this introduction for a couple reasons. One is that I once heard him say that the reason why he became such an ardent supporter of justice, why he wanted to make sure that everybody got due process, was because his parents were once incarcerated in 1942. And that drove him to make sure that everybody got a fair shake, and that nobody was falsely accused of crimes they didn't commit. I think the other thing that I'm thinking about this morning, or this afternoon, is that in addition to being a total badass social justice advocate, Jeff was also a very accomplished filmmaker. And I think I can relate to how he must have felt when he first got started. As Alvin mentioned, I'm a longtime executive director of a nonprofit organization, and it was a challenge to get people to take me seriously as a filmmaker. And I applied and I reached out to many groups that fund films, that fund documentaries, and pretty much all of them didn't give me the time of day. None of them are interested in this project. And so I did what I've been doing my entire adult life. I reached out to this community. I reached out to this community in Gardena, in San Fernando Valley, in East San Gabriel Valley, of course in the Bay Area, in Sacramento, in the Central Valley. I reached out to members of this community and I told them, if you support me, I will make this film. And I will make something meaningful, not just for events like Day of Remembrance, but something that young people can relate to. And the response was overwhelming. People were opening up their checkbooks and coming up to me with checks and thanking me. And I said, I need to be thanking you. And they said, no, thank you. Thank you for taking on this project. So I want to say here today that if any of you here in this audience wrote a check for this project, I want to say thank you. Because one of the things that I'm most proud of is that this project truly was a product of this community, in every sense of the word. This journey I've been on to make this project brought with it many unexpected experiences. And one of the things that I didn't anticipate when I started it was all the remarkable people that I would meet along the way. But nobody impacted me more and was more memorable than the day we spent with Aiko Herzig Yoshinaga. And I brought my daughter with me because I wanted her to get a chance to meet her. And we spent pretty much all day with her, and my daughter was by my side. And at the end of our shoot, my daughter approached Aiko, and there were tears welling up in her eyes. And she just kneeled beside Aiko, and she said, thank you. Because at that point, she understood how much she impacted this entire community. So I'd like to read you a very short note from her. Shortly after learning of Aiko's passing, my daughter took to social media. And I'd like to read you a little bit of what she wrote. She said, I'll never forget your bright smile, your sharp wisdom, and your Genki spirit. In times like these, it is especially important to remember her legacy of confronting the truth about our nation. It is becoming increasingly clear that this country will still turn on you in a second if they don't like the way you look or where you're from. Stay informed about the present, stay aware of the past, and stay woke. That's exactly what she would have wanted. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy.
Dale Midon. His parents were incarcerated at Rohr. Born in Los Angeles, he grew up in Gardena, where he was student body president at Gardena High. Oh, wow.
high point of my life.
He received his degree in political science from USC, where he graduated magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa. And he received his JD from Bolt Hall School of Law, University of California, and was admitted to practice in the U.S. District Court, Northern District of California, U.S. Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit, and in 1982, he was admitted to practice at the U.S. Supreme Court. His accomplishments, as you can read in the program, are long, and most notably, he was helping to lead the legal team that helped Fred Korematsu to have his conviction vacated. Dale.
Yeah.
Nicole Oshima is president of the UCLA Nikkei Student Union. At UCLA, she's studying communications, Asian American studies, and film. She's also a marketing intern for Kizuna. Nicole Oshima. So, to start things off, reactions to the film. Anyone? Don't be shy.
Can you all hear me? Okay. I'll try to speak up, but I really wanted to thank the filmmaker. I thought it was a really powerful film. I feel like every time we get to learn more about, or especially me, anytime I get to learn more about the Japanese American experience, it gives a lot of energy and reasons to continue the work that we're doing in Vigilant Love today. There were just so many parallels that came up for me about the organizing work that we're doing to challenge Islamophobic policies happening in Los Angeles and that are happening across the nation. For me, it just gives an opportunity to look at, I think, how we could use this film as a way to continue political education amongst our different communities. And it was like a range of emotion from like a lot of rage, a lot of frustration, a lot of sadness, and also really heartened by the work of Aiko and so many people in our community who've been just doing so much to resist and challenge what happened to our community. So I think gratitude and just more heart to do the work that we're doing. Yeah.
Tracy and I were actually talking a little bit before the panel and just emphasizing how educational it was as opposed to a lot of the films that kind of take, there was an emotional approach, but very educational. And it was also very personal. I did recognize a lot of people that were involved, and I think that made it a little bit more special for me in particular. And I just think that it was just really refreshing to see everything explained and not just like generalized, especially since I myself am not too knowledgeable about the specifics or the legal terms or everything like that, and explained in a way that I actually understood. And it was very easy to follow, I think.
I was one of the lawyers on cases, so I knew most of the facts. But what I didn't know, or I didn't appreciate so much, is the internal conflicts among the, in the interviews that we had behind the scenes. But it just reaffirms to me the cynicism with which the United States government did this tragic travesty of justice. What I also liked is, like any of these films that we're watching now, is a connection between the treatment of people of color and the Muslim American community and the Muslim community. So to make those connections, to connect those dots, really connects our experience as Japanese Americans to other communities of color. And that's critical for us to have the kind of coalition we need to change this country.
Dale, just personally, how did John approach you about being in the film?
He said, "You want to be in a film?" No, he told me he had information that we knew about, but he had these interviews that he wanted to do. And some of the folks that we knew were major participants, we never saw them on screen, we never saw their interview. James Rowe Jr., Edward Ennis' stepson. So, of course, we are been on a mission since this case, and even before then, to do education in the community, education of the American public, so that we understand what happened to Japanese Americans was not an isolated phenomenon, but that it was important to make these lessons, again, to actually learn and act on these lessons of history. So it was very easy sell. Plus, he came to our office to film, so we had to traipse all the way to Japantown, which is 2 miles away.
For each of you, what was your own experience in learning about the incarceration? How did you gain your knowledge about it?
It's been a process. My first experience was actually in high school, and it was just half a page about EO 9066. And to be honest, during that time, it's funny to reflect back on my younger self and read it and really not think much of, does this apply to me? And I feel like that might be the case for a lot of younger Japanese Americans who are growing up with educators who aren't making history relevant to the experiences of young people. So that was really my first point. I had like a white educator who knew that I was one of the only Japanese Americans in our grade level, but didn't really prompt or prod me to think about if this applied to me and my family's experience. And it wasn't really until I got more politically active as an undergraduate at UC Irvine did my dad finally begin to have conversations with me. And I feel like it came through in a way that was comfortable for him, so it came through an email. And it was like, this is some historical information about your great-grandfather. And that was when I had the chance to open up this email attachment, and it was an article that was titled, When Having a Japanese Flag Can Land You in Jail. And it just explained more of my family's particular camp experience because my dad's side was in Hawaii during the war, and my great-grandfather being a president of a Japanese Buddhist temple who had helped start that Buddhist temple on the Big Island, how he was in particular targeted for being Buddhist or seeming less American for that reason. And many of the people in Hawaii were targeted because of either their religious affiliation or other indicators that would show that they're more of a threat to this nation's security. But really we can see when we look at that experience how much that was about how we can still exert power and control over the community as being that Japanese people were such a big part of the labor force in Hawaii. So that was really, I think, that email opened up a lot and it opened up more questions, but I wish that I were politicized like so many, I think, younger people are now at a younger age, and appreciate what I had, though, at the same time.
So I actually am pretty, privileged in that my family does like to talk about these things. My Ji-chan likes to talk about himself a lot, and I think that, he was a key babe, but then I think that kind of got the ball rolling and got my Ba-chan to talk. She's sitting right there. She was in Jerome and Rower, and so and then they also volunteer at JANM, and so JANM has exhibits about the incarceration camps, and I've been there, grew up there a lot, and so I knew about it before I went to high school, but it wasn't until I think also growing up when Kizuna was kind of a really big force in the youth population, or I guess group, I don't use the word population, but they encourage us to really ask and do final projects about your own personal family's history. And so that's when I learned more about the negative side and the bad things about camp when I actually had to interview her for a final project in 10th grade. And then 11th grade is when you take AP US History, and that's when I already had this knowledge and this really deep personal connection to the story. Noticing that one paragraph, and I brought it up to my teacher, and I think I didn't go to school with a lot of Asian Americans at all. So just trying to start that conversation, and I'm also really lucky that we have an Asian American club on campus at my high school, and I was able to have a platform to kind of talk about it, not like a lot of people in my area. So, and now just talking about it with kids at school at Nikkei Student Union, other Nikkei Student Unions hold their own day of remembrances, and I think it's still really important to keep this alive.
My parents didn't talk about incarceration like most BC or second generation. They went to Aurora, Arkansas as well. And so we didn't learn much about from our parents. I had one paragraph in high school. I had a page in college. And it wasn't until almost exactly 50 years ago when a momentous event occurred. And that was the Third World Strike at San Francisco State. It was an outgrowth of the civil rights movement that was led and inspired us by African Americans. And they deserve that kind of credit and that kind of appreciation, because it set us on a path for understanding our own history. And when we got to understand our own history, we started to learn about what happened in these prisons and the incarceration of our own parents. Then I finally read the Korematsu, Hirabayashi, and Yasui decision in law school. And they were treated as abstract principles. They were not anything that had human drama or the loss of lives, broken homes, lost dreams, any of those. So I thought the decision was a travesty, and it impelled me, along with the inspiration we got from the Third World Strike and the development of ethnic studies, which we now take for granted because it's been here for a long time now, for me to really learn about the depth and breadth of this whole terrible, dark page in American history.
So what parallels are you seeing between what happened 77 years ago and what is happening in our society now?
In the work of Vigilant Love, we've been focusing on one policy called Countering Violent Extremism, CVE for short. And it's a policy that was actually started under the Obama administration in response, I think, to so much of the parts of our country so attached to looking at what is this country doing about homegrown terrorism. And so this is a program that comes from the Department of Homeland Security and is drawing, I think, very similar to what we saw happening to the Japanese American community, of looking at how can we essentially detect which of these ones are good Muslims or which of these ones are bad Muslims. So looking at these quote-unquote indicators for how Muslims could potentially be on a path to radicalization, knowing that there actually isn't any real theory that would show that a person is on a path to radicalization. So for even in the title of this film, Alternative Facts, it was just so clear, right? That we're still creating these policies that are oppressing many communities, are making communities feel watched or as seen as suspect, even when there isn't any facts and there's a debunked theory in place. And so for us in Vigilant Love, we've been really working on doing more community education, starting at the ground level of how are Muslim communities being impacted, of holding listening sessions, of focusing on how can we get more information, and so doing PRA requests. And it's just been actually really hard to get information, and we noticed that a lot of city council members are also unaware of the impacts of this policy as well. So for me, I think it's just noticing that the framework of national security is still so weaponized in oppressing Muslim communities today. And I think it's just so much of a reason for why Japanese Americans in particular have such an important place and role to play in how we show up in solidarity with Muslim Americans and a lot of other communities of color who are being watched or surveilled and impacted by racist stereotypes on our communities.
So I think it was pretty evident in the film how the parallels are today. But what really stuck out to me was just the uses of like euphemism and word choice and how it's framed in these legal documents. And I think just from my perspective as well, it's really hard for me to kind of understand this legal jargon. And when they use words that don't really, or it means something, but it's stated in a way that's very confusing in how laws are written and going about like the legal system. I just find it like really parallel now that I don't really understand politically what's going on, but I understand the effects on the communities, and I think that really stuck out to me the most, is that we have to stay involved, but people like Dale help us understand it, because it's very hard to understand.
That's because I'm so much older than you. I live this history. We're hearing echoes of history. If you look at Trump versus Hawaii and the Muslim travel ban, it really derives from the original immigration bans against the Chinese Americans, or Chinese. And that ban is a theoretical and legal basis for the Muslim ban. It was also similar to what happened to Japanese American in the massive racial profiling of Muslims as evil. And it's the simple connections are this. Their actions are taken against a marginalized group that is not well understood, that are people of color, and are generally politically powerless. So when you combine that with the racist rants of a president who's anti-immigrant, anti-persons of color, and talks about using national security as a phony basis for what happened to Japanese Americans, for example, what happened to Chinese, for example, and now which is being used to build a wall that goes nowhere. So I think what we're seeing is really that whole shadow of both the Japanese American experience, the Chinese experience. And again, it's an echo of history that if we keep allowing this to go on, it's like my partner Don said in the movie, those are the first steps in a establishment of a dictatorship and the loss of our rights.
Sort of along those lines, hiding the truth was a critical aspect of enabling the incarceration. What do you make of our current discourse in society over what are facts and what is fake? I know. It's a challenge.
You know, I could start with this. I mean, when I read Ben Detson's quote in there, that Japanese Americans were free to go whenever they want, there were no fences, but that's an outright lie. I mean, you have pictures, they're all over the place showing fences. So it's exactly what the president is doing right now. He's telling outright lies. And they're saying that there's this huge security threat at the border when immigration has been reduced over the years, has gone down. Security threat about drugs being imported across borders when they're really coming in through ports of entry, not across the border. So I mean, essentially, this whole foundation of national security is built today on lies, just like it was against Japanese Americans.
I know you made the argument against the Muslim ban. What's your reaction to why it didn't succeed at the Supreme Court?
This is a very complicated legal. Let me simplify it as much as we can. In Korematsu versus the United States, the Supreme Court abdicated its role. We have the checks and balance system. Every group is supposed to have power within the United States. The judiciary, the Supreme Court, abdicated its role and did not even look at the president's declaration that Japanese Americans are dangerous. It's doing the same thing in Trump versus Hawaii. It refused to look beyond the president's declaration and examine whether there was any basis, any rational basis, any factual basis for keeping the Muslims out. And so, biggest danger is the threat to our checks and balance system by the judiciary just giving up and, essentially deferring completely to the president.
Can any of you comment on the fact that there were American citizens who were deported to Japan and who basically lost their citizenship at the time? Is there any concern that that sort of tactic can be used again? Or?
Did you say American citizens?
Yes. Yes.
Well, Earl Warren, the governor up there, had proposed that during World War II, that we divest Japanese Americans from their citizenship, in which case they'd be, people without a country, which means they could be deported. So, we've heard that from various leaders of our government now, today. So the question goes back to what is birthright citizenship. That's an issue that in the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, it said that, whoever's born in the United States, if you're not, in the diplomatic corps, is an American citizen. And that was used to make sure we protected African Americans after the Civil War, or after the Black Codes in the Civil War. And they used that against Chinese Americans in the 1800s in a famous case called Wang Er Kim, established the principle in the 1880s that if you're born in the United States and you're non-diplomatic corps, you are a citizen. And that precedent has gone unchanged. So I think even though people are making those suggestions that we're going to deport all these people, I think legally it's going to be a very difficult thing.
Do you have any reaction to the current government's policy of detention of children? Any response to that?
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Any response to the administration's policy of detaining immigrant children?
It's criminal.
Next question, please.
I really, now that I've gone through my MSW clinical training and I look at the impacts that it has on children development, what we're losing is, I think, what a lot of Japanese Americans, younger Japanese Americans lost.
Children or descendants from immigrants. And for us to do the education to understand that and empathize with that is really critical. For us to understand that we're a nation of immigrants, and the immigrants really create more for this country than they ever take away.
I think just to go off your point, I was going to talk a little bit about empathy too, especially for those that I feel like I've come across a lot of politically apathetic people, and coming from a community where minority groups were the majority, just coming to a space like college where people are not empathetic to these situations or issues, and just trying, making sure that they care. You can't force people to care, but helping them practice empathy and realizing why it's important to understand these things, and eventually that might breed action and support. But I think we're starting on the very ground level of trying to help people understand and care more than just being performative on social media and stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like just one other thing to add on to that was just having shared space together to build actual relationships where we can practice that empathy, or even have a chance to feel empathy, or have an opportunity to understand what are people going through. Because it's really easy to be insular, and I think that's one of the things that for us as Japanese Americans, how do we continue to apply what's happened to our community with other people? So, you all are invited to the Break the Fast Iftar that we have in May, where we bring Japanese Americans and Muslim American communities together, and many of you have already came and been supporters for that. We are also just trying to create more spaces for our communities to connect, either through our college fellowship program, but you all can do that on your own in terms of reaching out to the people who you're not alike to in community, but just trying to get to know each other. Really, I think is one of the most important things that I've learned from elders or longtime activists, Kathy Masaoka, and other people in NCRR, is just that sharing space is so valuable and important in the work that we do.
Thank you very much. The clock's going to get us. I know we could carry on this discussion for a long time, but we appreciate all of you and for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you very much. I'd like to make another quick acknowledgement. We have Gardena Councilman Henderson here.
And We have a couple moments. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, if you would like to make a...
Younger generations an opportunity to hear from their elders how important it is that we never allow something like President Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066 to ever happen again. So congratulations to filmmaker John Osaki, and I love the title, Alternative Facts, The Lies of the Executive Order 9066. By looking back at this ugly chapter in America's history, which was only 77 years ago, it is a perfect reminder of the perilous times we're living in right now with this president. So kudos to the board of JCI, to the staff, and to all of your panelists and performers today for sharing your perspectives. We did bring some certificates of special recognition. I don't know if Hamilton have shared them yet or not, but let me just wrap this up by saying to all of you, yes, the President of the United States is divisive, he's dangerous, he does not respect the Constitution, and he's participating in undermining our democracy. I'm never going to give up on making sure that he is no longer the President of the United States. I know that there are some who said that I started talking about impeachment too early, but ladies and gentlemen, not early enough. This president deserves to be impeached. And yes, there are parallels. I was at LAX when we all got together to really push back on the president and this so-called ban on the Muslims that he did. He called it just a travel ban, but it was a ban on Muslims. And so yes, there are a lot of parallels, and we must recognize them. And I don't know who that beautiful lady was at the end of the film who said, if you see something, say something. Maybe I talk too much, but I'm going to keep on saying it. And this president of the United States is not deserving of being the president of the United States. And this democracy is in danger, and we must all stand up against it. Thank you very much.
Now, this is not in the program, but we have another speaker, and she's with the Council on American Islamic Relations, where she is an immigrants' rights advocate. So I'd like to give a couple minutes for her to speak here. Yusra Kafagi, hope I pronounced that right.
Last year, Carol Lake took 2 busloads of activists, leaders, and former incarcerees. I remember the bus ride was my favorite part of the pilgrimage. It's where I got to bond with Muslims and Japanese Americans, and we got to share our stories as immigrants. We got to address misconceptions, and we listened to spoken word by Kurt Akida, a community organizer that I had the honor of organizing the trip with. On our way home, we, about 20 miles away from Manzanar, I remember seeing a bus with 2 flat tires that stopped on the side of the road. In fact, we found out that they never got to arrive to Manzanar because the bus had the flat before they actually arrived. Kurt found out that there were 3 elders and a child on that bus who needed to catch a return flight to Hawaii the next day. We were able to make room on our bus, and not one of our passengers minded the delay. In fact, I remember the passengers welcomed our new guests with cheers. And I'll never forget that the children offered these guests origami, cranes, and the Arab aunties offered home-cooked meals. And I remember how one of the guests shared her story of incarceration. She had been living in LA when EO 9066 was put into effect. She, her mom, and her siblings were sent to an incarceration camp in Arizona. Her father was sent to another incarceration camp, and as a toddler, her family was torn apart. just as families continue to be torn apart today by man-made borders and policies such as the Muslim ban. Years later, her family was released from imprisonment, but they had lost their car, their home, and their pride and dignity as humans. But her mother left the incarceration camp determined to make life work. Of course, I'm not giving her story justice, but I remember that when she told the story, I broke down in tears. It had reminded me of my mother's strength. Sorry. Sorry. My mom immigrated from Egypt in the late 80s. And when I was about 5 years old, I remember we went to a food pantry, or it was a soup kitchen. I can't remember exactly. But we needed to get some food, and I was really shocked that we were going to get food. My mom is the best Egyptian cook ever. And I asked her, I was like, why are you there? And she was like, don't worry, Isra, I think it's gonna be all right. Eventually she was right, everything did become all right. And always from a young age, I had always wanted to be involved in doing civil rights work. But today I share these memories with you so that we remember the strength and resilience of our people. We have overcome flat tires, poverty, discriminatory laws, and so much more. And we've done it through love, sacrifice, determination, and by supporting one another. I hope you remember to reflect on our past, because it allows us to learn about the truth of our history and to take pride in who we are. It allows us to be critical of our present and ensure that the dark parts of our past never happen again. And it allows us to accomplish, to appreciate and take pride in what we've accomplished so far. And it helps us to be hopeful for a future for an America that embraces us all. Thank you.
You sort of mentioned the Manzanar pilgrimage. This year will be the 50th anniversary of the pilgrimage. So I would urge as many people as possible to go and attend. The Manzanar committee has a table back there, and you can go and visit and learn more about that. As a matter of fact, I'd like to acknowledge all of our community supporters, the ones who are here and then the ones who are listed in your programs. You know, it's the union of various community groups makes us all stronger, and we would appreciate if you go and learn more about them and support them as well. I should also point out that at the table back there, Mary Atsuko Higuchi has her artwork, and Don Hata has some of his work on cards and things, and he's donating all the proceeds from his sales to the Gardena Valley Japanese Cultural Institute. So, yeah, we thank him for his donations, and also I'd like to acknowledge Donald Inadomi for his donations, and to my fellow board members who are listed in your program for also helping to support this program. I should point out that the Gardena Valley Japanese Cultural Institute is a nonprofit organization, and we would also appreciate donations. There's a box at the table. And also, if you want to learn more about our programs, there's information there. I should also mention, this program doesn't happen without the support of a great many people. I want to thank our co-sponsors, the UCLA Asian American Studies Center, and the Aratani Care Award. I also want to thank Gardena Bowl and At Home Kitchen for donating the food that is back there. So please enjoy that after the program. And I want to thank Nicole Sato, who you saw earlier, for helping. She's the program manager here at the Japanese Cultural Institute. And also to the rest of the Day of Remembrance Committee, if you could raise your hands. This would not have happened without the first sacrifice of time and effort. And in particular, I just want to acknowledge Michelle Yamashiro Hirano, who just got married last weekend. Congratulations, Michelle. Okay. Thank you again to our panelists and to all of the speakers who participated today. And thank you to all of you for coming today. One last thing, I want to thank Boy Scout Troop 683, and if you could all hang in for a moment, they'll be conducting the flag detail to close out this program. Thank you. Oh, okay. I need to mention, there are Day of Remembrance t-shirts for sale, and again, the profits from that go to the Gardena Valley JCI. So, buy a couple of them.
Signed by Alvin.
Thank you all for coming today.